Minister Lai Mohammed, thank you very much for giving us your time this afternoon. So let me ask you this. The February 25 elections went on, followed by the gubernatorial and state or local elections. Tell me, what did go right and what didn't go right? And what do you think can be done to improve on Nigeria's elections in the future?
Thank you very much for having me, Peter. I think the just concluded general elections in Nigeria will go down in history as the most transparent and the most authentic elections ever held in the history of the country. And this is despite the attempts by the opposition to actually discredit the elections. And I'm glad you were there also. And why is this election the most credible? Why is this the most authentic? Why is it the most transparent? It's one, because technology was introduced, which helped in weeding out a lot of overvoting, multiple voting, illegal voting, underage voting, people who are voting with, used to vote with purchased or stolen, voters' cards. Secondly, because a level playing ground was created for all the candidates. We had a president who had vowed to leave a legacy of an electoral fidelity when he was leaving, and he walked his talk. The first thing he did was that he did not confer any advantage on the ruling party in terms of the election. Secondly, he did not allow anybody to use security agencies to rig the elections. Thereby, he was able to create a level playing ground. And it would take somebody who has witnessed elections in Nigeria before to actually appreciate what I'm saying. Because before, the usual practice would be to use your influence as a sitting president or as a sitting governor to rig elections, but it was never allowed to be done this time around. And it's also significant to note that this is one election where the usual things you took for granted never worked. And it's an election where we learned some lessons too, majorly that voters can decide, where to vote, and that you must earn their respect, and otherwise they will vote the way they want to vote. But generally, because of the reasons I've said now, it was the freest, the most transparent, and the most credible elections in the history of Nigeria.
So, Mr. Minister, what do you say to critics who say that the beavers, as promised by INEC, that it will be used in the transmission of the results to ensure transparency, credibility, were not followed? Those instances of promises were not kept, and that is why they were saying there were voter irregularities. Some people say there were voter ballot snatching. Some people talked about the figures were massaged. Some people also said there were threats and intimidation. How do you respond to such criticisms, Mr. Minister?
I think, Peter, there's been a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of misconception about either beavers or even IREV. And I think there are two different instruments.
Right.
Let's start with the beavers. The beavers is actually the bimodal voters accreditation system,
Right.
which is used to accredit every voter. With the beavers, you have to present yourself to the INEC officials They take your biometrics, they take your photograph, and once you take your fingerprint, then you are accredited, and that goes right away to the back-end server of the INEC. And the moment you have accredited, it means you can do it twice.
Right.
Now, the beavers have been very useful actually to clean up the register. Put it this way, with the beavers, you can only vote once.
Right.
With the beavers, you cannot use a stolen voter's card to vote.
Right.
With the beavers, you cannot use a purchased voter's card to vote. And that is why you see, even though about 87 million people received their permanent voter's card, with the beavers, less than 25 million actually voted, because the beavers weeded out all these ghost workers. That means all these ghost voters. Now, what used to happen before was at every polling unit, at the conclusion of voting, all the political agents of the parties would sign that the election at the unit was satisfactory.
Right.
But if you look at a copy of the beavers, a copy of the from EC8,
Right.
because once you vote, you enter the results into the form EC8A. It has columns for the number of accredited voters, number of ballots, papers issued, number of registered voters in that polling unit, number of damaged, ballots, number of unused ballots, number of, number of invalid votes.
Right.
Now, what used to happen before was that the same number of ballot papers will be issued to agree with number of registered voters in that polling unit.
Right.
So let's say, for instance, 100 people are registered in a polling unit, but only 30 people come out to vote. The usual practice is for the political parties to agree to share the remaining 70 votes among themselves. But with beavers, that is no longer possible. If there be no beavers, the 63 million voters that did not turn up to vote would have found their way to vote, because they would have shared, the balance of the ballot. So with beavers, it's not possible to do multiple voting or to vote with another person's, voter's card.
See, the reason why I asked about the massaging of figures as alleged by critics is because of the number of people who were accredited or registered to vote, 87 million, as you said. And then the results come out, and it's less than half of people who voted. And that is why some of the critics were saying, no, something might have happened as a result, because a lot of people went out to vote. There was voter enthusiasm. There was no voter apathy. How come the results were that less than half of the people voted? And that's what you're trying to explain here.
Technology. Largely technology. Number two, you see, even if I register and have a permanent voter's card, no law compels me to come and vote. And then the hype before the election was so bad that many people did not even want to go out to vote. But I think largely it was due to technology. Of course, some people also adduce other reasons, like the challenges they met in terms of, availability of cash, because it was about the same time that the new currency policy came in. But I think the sanity is largely attributable to the new technology beavers.
So is technology to stay in Nigeria? Has it come to stay in Nigeria? And will we see more deployment of technology to increase the sanitation of the process to ensure more transparency and credibility and less challenge of election results in Nigeria?
Absolutely. I think beavers has come to stay. IREV has also come to stay. I'll come to explain that later. And I think as the world moves around, as the world moves forward, there'll be other technology. Don't forget that this time around, the INEC even tried to introduce, online registration. The only problem with online registration today is that you must still at a point, present yourself physically to be captured, to capture your biometrics. So yes, I'm sure we must expect from INEC, we should from INEC, even better technology than what we have today.
So talk to me about the challenge of the opposition, both the PDP, the People's Democratic Party, the main opposition party, and the Labour Party led by Governor Peter Obi have challenged the outcome of the election. They are in court. March 31st, I think, was the last time they could legally challenge it, or the cut-off date to challenge it. Both claim they won the election. What is your take on their challenge?
They are jokers.
Why?
You see, the Constitution of Nigeria is very clear. For you to win elections for presidency in Nigeria, you must fulfill two conditions. The first, that you must have the priority of votes, that you must have scored the highest votes among all the candidates. Secondly, you must succeed in scoring 1/4 of the votes cast in at least 25 states of the Federation. The only candidate that met that requirement is Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who scored 8.79 million votes and had 1/4 of the votes cast in 29 states of the Federation. The next person was Abubakar Atiku, who scored 6.9 million votes, but was only able to score 1/4 of votes in 21 states of the Federation. And Peter Obi came third with 5.8 million votes, but was only able to score 1/4 of votes cast in 15 states of the Federation alone. So how can any of them now say they won the election? Plus, they have made allegations of fraud. They've not come out with one shred of evidence. And the only allegation they've made is that because the elections were not uploaded real time on the IREV, therefore there is fraud. I think they don't even understand what IREV means. IREV is actually the INEC Result View Portal. It's a portal where you can view the results of all the polling units. It's not a portal or a tool used for collation of results. So as long as your agents sign the Form EC8A, that is the only valid document that you can tender before an election petition tribunal to say probably there has been fraud or not. Because like I said, the procedure is that once elections are concluded, the agents will sign, then a snapshot of the Form EC8A is now uploaded on the IREV. So even if IREV does not work at all, it does not affect the integrity of the elections, because what is being uploaded on the IREV is actually the physical paper. It's a snapshot of the results. So this is why I say they claim there's been fraud, but they have not come out with one single proof of fraud. And when you also look at the pattern of the other elections, I think it shows really that the APC is still the dominant party, is still a popular party. And it's interesting that both Atiku and Obi did not challenge the result of the presidential elections in their own states or in Lagos State. And the same candidates think because they have won the same number of states with Ashwaju, therefore they should be declared winner. It doesn't work that way. Ashwaju did not only come first in 12 states like they did, but he came second in 29 other states. And that's what gave him the vote. So why say, yes, there have been allegations of violence. Yes, it's true there were pockets of violence, but it was not substantial enough to either mar the poll or to affect the outcome of the polls. If, for instance, there are 176,000 polling units, and the police is able to record only 489 electoral infractions and arrest 781 electoral offenders, given the magnitude of the votes, I don't think 489 infractions in 176,000 polling units is enough to affect the outcome of any election.
So, Mr. Minister, what do you say to both the international and local observers? In this case, IAGA came out with a statement immediately after the elections that they lacked transparency. The European Union and some international poll observers said the elections were not too transparent. How do you juxtapose that?
But the African Union said the election was free and fair, and that 95% of the polling units was calm and peaceful. Now, but to answer your question more directly, that many of these observers came to the election prejudiced. They had been overfed by social media hype, which already gave the elections, it gave the victory already to the Labour Party. But they've forgotten one thing, that elections are conducted by real human beings,
right,
not artificial intelligence. That's the honest truth. Many of them were fed on social media, figures, phantom polls, opinion surveys, which were basically fake. So they found it difficult at the end of the election to really accept the reality on ground. And we challenge anybody who has any proof of fraud to come forward. But all we hear are simply whispers. Yes, we had challenges. Some people complained that election materials did not reach everywhere at the same time.
Right.
So when you have 176,846 polling units scattered all over the country, with the kind of topography of Nigeria, where INEC had to use donkeys, human porters, boats, to even get election materials everywhere, I think they should be commended rather than be demonized. So we are glad that the two candidates have gone to the election tribunal, which is where they ought to go. But we are worried that they still incite people to violence. They are calling out people to the streets. They are threatening that this election will be the end of democracy. They are behaving like anarchists and insurrectionists.
Well, some people are saying the government is using that as a pretext to arrest some of the critics or those who are challenging the outcome of the election, and that they were just expressing their freedom of expression just as enshrined, or their opinions as enshrined in the Nigerian constitution. How do you respond to them?
Peter, no decent country would tolerate this kind of rhetorics. No decent democracy. As a matter of fact, their behavior is so reprehensible. They are so reckless in their utterances. You see, a Democrat should not believe in democracy only when he or she wins elections. The true quality of a Democrat is a person who believes in democracy even when he's losing, when he has lost. And all we are saying, you are free to dispute the outcome of the election, but please come with proof. If you want to destroy democracy in Nigeria because you've lost the election, you're not a true Democrat. This is what we are saying. We're not asking them not to dispute the outcome of the elections. Of course, that's what the election tribunals are for. But anybody who goes through history will come out with the conclusion that this is not only the freest elections, but the least violent election. Peter, you were around. I will just start from 1999. In 1999, there were about 80 people died as a result of the elections in Nigeria. In 2003, it jumped to 100. In 2007, it jumped to 300. In 2011, 800 lives were lost. In 2015, 100 lives. In 2019, 150. But these 2023 elections, only between 13 and 28. So the difference is clear that even in terms of violence, for only pockets of violence, that is not enough to mar or taint the outcome of the elections.
Mr. Minister, briefly talk to me about the legacy of President Muhammadu Buhari as he leaves office now. You have like a month or so to go. In terms of economic empowerment, in terms of security, what is the legacy, in your view, of President Muhammadu Buhari?
Well, that is a whole topic on its own, Peter. But let me say this, that no president in the history of Nigeria has done so much with so less. No president in the history of Nigeria has done so much with the challenges he faced. But in terms of infrastructure, in terms of improving the economy, in terms of providing social intervention for the vulnerables, in terms of fighting corruption, I think he will go down in history of Nigeria as one of the best leaders we've ever had. Fortunately, we have been able to put all this, in a document. My office, in the last couple of months, started what we call this Buhari Scorecard Series, which was a program whereby every minister came to give a scorecard of his ministry in the last 8 years. That today has been completed. It has been burned into a compendium. But more important than that is that today we've created a website, www.pmbscorecard.gov.ng, where the legacies of Buhari, his achievements for 8 years, can be, assessed by everybody and even posterity. So,
Mr. Minister, can you confidently say that President Muhammadu Buhari's promise to leave a legacy of free, fair, transparent, and hand over peacefully to the next duly elected president of Nigeria, he kept those promises?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is why, Peter, like I said at the beginning of this interview, President Buhari did not confer any undue advantage on even the ruling party during these elections. He also did not allow anybody to use security agencies to rig elections. What used to happen in the past, we all know, where the sitting president would use the influence of his office to determine the outcome of elections, especially in his own favor. What used to be the practice before he came was ballot box snatching, broad daylight, and stuffing of ballots. Or where you see security agencies calling off, voting points and asking people of their own, ilk to be stuffing ballot papers. Or where you have, serving governors, ministers, directing security agencies to help them rig elections. President Buhari will not have any of that. And where did it ever happen between 1999 to date, where a sitting president will lose presidential election in his own state? For Buhari, he would rather lose a state than win at all cost. And this is why I'm always amused by these desperate losers. Now, you see, the 4 states in Nigeria, which you know, that have the highest number of registered voters are Lagos, Kano, Katsina, and Kaduna. Incidentally, they are all controlled by APC ruling party. We lost elections in those 4 key states. One belonging to the president, another belonging to the president-elect, another the state of the party chairman, another being the state Katsina is state of the president. Lagos is the state of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Kaduna is one of our leaders, the governor of Rufai, and Katsina Masari. And Kano Gwanduje. But we lost elections, and these are states controlled by us. Plus, all the big wigs in the party, from the president to the president-elect to the chairman of the party to the DG of the campaign organization, all lost in their state's presidential election. This has never happened in the history of Nigeria. So, what if you want to talk about transparency? Do you need any proof more than that? And by the way, Peter Obi is not disputing the electoral victory he had in Lagos State. It was the same election that produced that.
Right.
So you can see when I say they're just desperate losers. They're not good losers. Now, so the president has met his promise to leave behind an election that will be free, fair, and transparent. But I think it now behoves the media, especially international media, to stop providing oxygen for these anarchists, to stop giving them any form of support. And also international organizations and also foreign governments to stop accommodating the lies and the hoaxes of these desperate losers. And they should, it's amazing that the kind of thing that they will not tolerate in their countries, they just, look the other way when it's happening in Nigeria or any other country. Otherwise, who are censored, which I've not seen any foreign country that has even commented on statements credited to some of these results that democracy would terminate in Nigeria if Ashwad Bola Ahmed Tinubu is sworn in on the 29th of May. This is beyond politics. This is insurrection. This is treason. So I think we need the support of the international community, international media. For God's sake, we are not asking you not to be critical.
Right.
But we are saying be critical of even those things you consume on social media. I know it's difficult for some of the social media, some of the foreign media who have made up their mind, who believe that one party will win, to actually eat the humble pie. But I think the mark of honor is for them to do so, especially if you cannot come out with any evidence of rigging.
Mr. Minister, let me ask you this, because a lot of international media organizations are worried about the new policy of registration in Nigeria. They want to know what are the advantages of registering in Nigeria for international media organizations to operate. What are the downsides? What are the good sides? As you are living now, you are a guru in the media. Talk to me about
but Peter, what is the new registration you're talking about? What's the new registration?
Well, I have this document here. It says request for foreign media to register with the NBC, with the National Broadcasting Corporation Commission, right? National Broadcasting Commission has requested all foreign broadcasters operating in Nigeria to get registered with the commission. What entails in this?
Well, I don't. Is that part of the code?
I think so.
Or part of the law?
I think I'm not too sure, but this is what I just read, and I said no. Since you are the big man, you need to explain this to me.
Then who issued that directive?
I think this is from the National Broadcasting Commission. Yes.
Well, if it is part of the broadcasting code, then it's the law of the country. And why would it be wrong to ask foreign broadcasters to register with the regulator? I don't see anything that is
People wanted to find out what the rationale is, especially when the administration is going out now, and then they said
this is not a new law. I mean, like I said, if it is coming from the NBC and if it's part of their code, it's not a new law. It's been there since.
So talk to me. For those who fail, the media organization who fail to register, what happens to them?
I think the NBC DG will be in a better position because I don't have the code, the particular portion of the code with me. I can't remember it, but I think the DG NBC will be in a better position too. So I mean, there could be fine, it could be any penalty. I don't know.
So before we go, Mr. Minister, a lot of people talked about insecurity. Some even wondered if the elections will come on in the first place. The election went ahead, although there were some skirmishes, as you put it. But talk to me about security going forward. And before we leave, what do you think the relations between Abuja and Washington would be going forward, knowing the president-elect very well, whom you have had relations with and have good cordial relations with?
Thank you, Peter. I thought about security. I think we've done our bit as a government in tackling the Hydra-headed insecurity in Nigeria. We have definitely degraded Boko Haram, even if we have not succeeded completely in eliminating Boko Haram. We put in place both kinetic and non-kinetic, initiatives to tackle insecurity. We have also been able to address other issues such as herdsmen, farmers clashes, banditry, militancy, and the like. However, I think we need again to call on our friends, international community, the US, the Western, the Europe, to please stop supporting terrorist groups in Nigeria. IPOB has been declared a terrorist group in Nigeria, but yet they are accommodated in the US, in Europe. They are allowed to raise funds. They lobby congressmen. This is like Al-Qaeda, because recently a publication, the group said that IPOB is one of the 10 most dangerous terrorist organizations in the world. Long before the elections, IPOB had been attacking institutions of democracy. They've been killing judges. They've been setting INEC offices on fire. Yet, they are still being pampered here. Yet, they are still being accommodated. So how do you want to wipe out terrorism globally if you don't cooperate with a country like Nigeria that has declared, an organization a terrorist group? What is the difference between IPOB and Al-Qaeda? They all kill unjustly. They all don't like democracy. So I think for global peace to reign, there must be more honesty on the part of everybody. Your last question, the last leg of your question, I believe that there's already a robust, relationship between Nigeria and the U.S. and I have no reason to doubt that will be sustained. But I think the right person to talk about our relationship and the relationship between the U.S. and Nigeria will probably be the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.